And what's up everybody, and this is Danny, and with the help of 28 Mobile, today I'm going to be comparing the two largest camera sensors on any smartphone as of the making of this video, and that is the Sony Xperia Z1 and the Nokia Lumia 1020. And the 1020 touts a 41 megapixel pure view Carl's Eye sensor, while the Z1 touts a 20.7 megapixel G lens from Sony. So which one is the better camera and the better phone? Well, let's go ahead and take an in-depth look, and we'll get started right now. So let's dive in and get started with the Sony Xperia Z1, and this is the successor to the Sony Xperia Z, and there's a lot of improvements that they brought to the table this time. And the first thing you'll notice is the metal construction on the outside frame, and that makes a huge difference with the feeling in the hand and the sturdiness of this device. And you also have an improved 5-inch 1080p display with Ilusionist technology, and it does look better than the Z did, and it's all enclosed in this Dragon Trail glass, and the glass is very slippery of course and has a lot of fingerprints, but that glass also brings waterproof technology and dustproof technology like the Sony Xperia Z did, so it's very nice in this glass construction. But the big deal about this device is the 20.7 megapixel G sensor that is in this, made by Sony, and it's an f2.0 lens to bring a lot of light in, and it's supposed to bring a lot of improvements over their Sony Xperia Z. And of course it comes with a 2-stage shutter key, so it makes it very easy for you to take pictures. But the one thing you have to watch out is how you hold this, because the actual lens is on the top left for you when you're holding the device, so you have to make sure that you hold it correctly, or sometimes you may get a blur from the photo from your finger. So if you're aware of that, you shouldn't really have any problems taking pictures. On the software side, the Z1 runs Android 4.2 Jelly Bean, which is not the latest, but it's pretty close. And it runs on top of Sony's custom UI skin. And some people don't like this UI, but I find it to be pretty non-intrusive. This thing is being powered by a Qualcomm Snapdragon 800 quad-core processor with 2 GB of RAM and the latest Adreno graphics. And I have to say that this is a generational leap in performance over the Sony Xperia Z. There is no stuttering, the UI is buttery smooth, and this is the fastest Android handset that I've used from Sony yet. So you will not be disappointed with the performance. To open the camera app, all you have to do is press on the 2-stage shutter key, and you'll be greeted by a very simplified camera UI. Even though that the camera features other modes such as time shift burst, sweep panorama, the AR effect, picture effect, and info eye, you're mostly going to be shooting in this superior auto mode, which is just made for you to point and shoot, for there are not a lot of effects or manual controls here, so you're just going to be pointing and shooting. I was very excited to see a manual mode here, but it is a little bit disappointing, and let me tell you why. Because the only thing you can really change here is the resolution. So the 20 megapixel shots can only be taken in the manual mode, and your different 8 megapixel and 3 megapixel, 2 megapixel shots. But the bad thing about this is that there is not a lot of manual control here. Only thing you have is exposure value and your white balance change, and that's it. So you don't have any kind of ISO changes, you can't manually focus, you can't look at the shutter speed, you cannot change a lot in this mode. Very disappointing. But I'm crossing my fingers that Sony will add those in a software update, which they could easily do. But looking at the pictures on this 5-inch 1080p display is fantastic. So let's go ahead and move to the Nokia Lumia 1020, and this thing houses a whopping 41 megapixel pure view camera with a Carl's Eye lens, and it features an aperture of 2.2 to let a lot of light in and take beautiful pictures. And it's also housed in this well-crafted polycarbonate plastic, which is of matte finish and is just beautiful, and I just love the build quality of the 1020. The 1020 also houses a 2-stage shutter key, which makes it very easy to take pictures, but they also made a camera grip for the 1020, which makes it very easy for you to take pictures and has a good feel in the hand, and also houses an extra battery. So it is very recommended to have that accessory if you're going to take a lot of pictures. The Lumia 1020 is being powered by Windows Phone 8, and this has the latest Amber update. So as of making of this video, this is the latest Windows experience that you can get. 8.1 should be right around the corner, so this should get that update. But The Windows Phone platform is very viable, it's really starting to grow, but now that Nokia has been bought by Microsoft, hopefully they will put more money into this ecosystem and give us better apps and better app selection. The screen size is 4.5 inches, so it's slightly smaller than the Xperia Z1, but it's being powered by the clear black technology here, so you can see it's very easy to view in the sunlight. And even though that this is not a 1080p panel, it's actually a little bit above 720p, it still looks pretty crisp. And the performance of this is still great. Windows Phone has always been great on lower clocked hardware, and even though this is only being powered by a dual-core Snapdragon chip with 2 GB of RAM, it still flies. The UI is very buttery smooth. And also, if you like Microsoft Office and productivity tools, then it comes standard with the Nokia Lumia 1020. To open the camera app, all you have to do is hit the two-stage shutter key and you're greeted by the Nokia ProCam app, which is the total opposite of the Z1. You have a lot of manual controls here. You have control over the exposure value, the shutter speed, the ISO, you even have manual focus. I mean, white balance. There's a lot of things you can do with this, and this is probably the most feature-rich smartphone camera out on the market. And by feature rich, I mean by manual controls, and it even has lossless zoom here to where you can zoom in after the fact. So you can just go ahead and take the picture however you want to, and you can go ahead and zoom in, crop the photo, and even change the aspect ratio of the picture that you took. So this is very interesting for just even point and shoot camera people that just want to change things later after the fact. So I really like this in the Nokia ProCam app. So the advantage of the Xperia is that there is no large camera hump on the back, and there is an LED flash on both of these devices, but on the Lumia you also have a xenon flash, a much more powerful flash, so that is a nice add-on there. And the one thing that you'll notice that big camera hump for is the mechanical optical image stabilization, which is only done by software on the Xperia, and we will compare those later on in this video. The lack of the huge camera bump on the back allows the Z1 to be much thinner than the Nokia Lumia 1020, so it's probably a little easier to pocket, and it just feels a little bit better in the hand for it's flatter on the back and you don't have this weird odd bump that is on the back. But both of them are pretty easy to hold, but you will notice that in the 1020, especially when you're making phone calls. The Z1 is notably heavier though, so that's one thing that you need to keep in mind, but they both feel very premium in the hand. They both have premium build quality with premium materials, so I don't think you'll be disappointed at all in any of these devices when it comes to build quality. Okay, so now we've looked at the hardware, let's go into what you're really here for, and that is the image quality on these two large camera sensors. But let me first start with the weaknesses of these two camera sensors, and once we start with the weaknesses, then we'll get into the shots and the video. So let's go ahead and get started. Probably the biggest fault with the 1020 camera is when it's in auto mode. So if you're a point and shooter, you'll notice that a lot of times it doesn't pick the right white balance. So you'll end up with a bluish cast like this. And this is in the daylight, by the way. So the thing that you need to do is go ahead and change the white balance on there, and you will get a beautiful shot like this. So that is the advantage of having something like a 1020, is where you can adjust the manual controls to get the exact shot that you want. Hopefully they'll correct this in a software update, but you do get a lot of these shots here, and this is in the bright sunlight and you get this weird cast on it. But just change the white balance and just change the exposure value a little bit and you're gonna get a beautiful shot. After taking a lot of pictures with the Z1, the biggest gripe with it is that it overexposes pretty much everything. Not in all situations, but most of the time. So just tack down that exposure value a little bit and you'll get much better pictures. And sometimes you'll have to mess with the white balance, but it does a pretty good job of auto white balance. So let's go ahead and jump right into the images and compare them. So these are all my shots from the day in the park, and look at this Lumia 1020 shot. It seems to be higher contrasted than the Z1 shot. So when you look at them side by side, the Lumia definitely has a higher contrast. Even though the details are the same, the Lumia shot looks a little bit better. And here is the 1020 shot of the lake here, and here is a shot with the Z1. So the white balance here looks better on the Z1, but the Lumia 1020 definitely has a better bokeh effect. And looking at this shot here with the 1020, it seems like the Z1 might have a better dynamic range here. It seems to pick up a little bit more, and the color accuracy tends to be a little bit better on the Z1 as well. And the Lumia has been known to kind of oversaturate the colors here on this bush, and it's doing the same. And the Z1 has more muted and more natural colors. So when you look at them side by side, you can see how saturated the colors are on the 1020, but some people like that look. And this is pretty much the same thing of this stone here. It seems to be brighter and more colorful on the Lumia 1020, but it's definitely not as color accurate as the Z1. And that seems to be the theme here with the 1020 versus the Z1. They both take very good shots, but sometimes it's a little bit muted on the Z1 side, but I find that the color accuracy tends to be better for the Z1, and dynamic range the same. Sometimes the Lumia 1020 looks a little better than the Z1, so sometimes they were kind of mixed on results, but regardless, they both take fantastic shots. And here's an example where I think the image stabilization also comes into play, where you look at the Z1 shot here, and it's definitely not as detailed as the 1020 shot. So I think that makes a huge difference on image stabilization for you're not trying to think about holding the camera still all the time. But macro wise, I think the Z1 wins. For the 1020 has a little bit of a problem focusing under macro, and it also has problems with white balance even though it's adjusted. And yes, this one is adjusted right here. You can see that the Z1 definitely takes a clearer picture and has a better performance value with the macro shot itself. And you'll know what I mean if you have one. And one more time, here is a clearer picture with the 1020 versus the Xperia Z1 with the lack of image stabilization. And I think that makes a huge difference. Look at how much clearer that 1020 is, much more detail. And the 1020 also has a higher contrasted shot once again here, where the Z1 is more blown out. So definitely the 1020 looks better in that shot, more natural in this instance. Okay, so now that we've compared a few, this is your chance to let me know what you think has the better image quality. So go ahead and enjoy this music and enjoy the extra photographs, and let me know what you think in the comment section below. Alright, so let's go ahead and move on to the 1080p video on both of these devices, and the Z1 is on the left and the Lumia 1020 is on the right. And if you look, the Z1 definitely looks a little bit better under macro video here. So when you look at the B, it looks a little better, the colors are more accurate under that side, and the Lumia 1020 looks pretty good as well, but as you can see that the Z1's color accuracy looks a little bit better, a little bit darker, more contrasted video here. So it looks like a little bit of the opposite happening with the video. So what we're going to do is go ahead and move around a little bit and look at the 1020 there on the right. Just had a little bit of a white balance issue where it turned the video to a more of a blue cast, so kind of the same thing that happens with the photos. And we'll go ahead and move around a little bit and see how the image stabilization does. And you can see that the Z1 is doing a pretty good job with the software side, because it has software stabilization instead. The video looks pretty smooth on both sides here. As you can see, there's no stutters or skips or anything. So let's go right back into the macro mode again to see how it performs. And the one thing I want to talk about is the amount of detail in between these two sensors. And if you look at the 1020 sensor, it's a little bit more blown out, as you can see here on macro. But look at those purple flowers. You're getting much more detail here, especially when you back out a little bit from macro. the level of detail on the 1020 seems to be higher. And of course, the 1020 also has lossless zoom. So let's go ahead and zoom in with the Z1 and see what happens. And look at that. It just looks terrible. But the 1020, look at that. You're not losing much at all there. The clarity is still beautiful. And look at that bug there. You can see that very clearly. So on the video with the zoom, the 1020 is a clear winner. So let's look at some still video here with the Lumia 1020, and this is incredible looking video. This looks like almost DSLR footage here, and it's nice and contrasty, and it looks really good. Really cinematic looking video. This is the same place with the Xperia Z1, and you can see that the video doesn't look as good. It looks good, but it definitely doesn't look as good as the 1020. So what about image stabilization and audio? Let's go ahead and check this video out to see how stabilization works on both. This is a walking and optical image stabilization test. Since the Xperia Z1 does not have optical image stabilization and the Nokia Lumia 1020 does, just wanted to show that and test the mic performance and audio performance. So I'll be switching in between, but let's see how smooth these videos come out to be with the optical image stabilization, or see how stable this video is in comparison with these two flagship handsets right now. So we're going to end with low light performance, and on the 1020 it creates a less noisy shot, even though that the Z1 looks like it's letting in more light and that it's actually picking up a brighter picture. See here on the 1020, it's more color accurate, I think, in position to where I was in the parking lot, and the Z1 has a very noisy shot if you look at it very closely. So the 1020 for me still looks like it performs better in low light. So what about ambient lighting like in a restaurant? So taking a picture of these crayons here, you can see that the Lumia does a better job of detail in the crayons itself. And even in this drink, the Lumia 1020 picks up the color a lot better than the Z1, which I was talking about earlier, how it washes out the color and overexposes for compensation. I guess you could say that this pizza is oversaturated in color, but I prefer it to the actual shot in the Z1 here. So if you look at them side by side, I prefer the 1020 pick. But now look at the detail on this wood here on the left side of the 1020, where the Xperia's is very noisy. And even with this picture here of the iPhone 5S, look at how good the Lumia is adjusted compared to the adjustment with the Xperia Z1. So I definitely prefer the adjustment 2 on the 1020. You can get a much better pick in low light with the 1020 with its manual adjustments. So which one do I think is the better camera? I think that the 1020 overall is the better camera, because with its manual controls, you're able to fix the shortcomings of the auto mode of the Lumia 1020 camera. So you take the shot, it's wrong, you're able to go and manually change the settings for you to get the shot that you want, and the Z1 lacks that as of right now. So if the Z1 had some software features to be able to change those things, this could be a little bit different. On the contrary though, I think the Z1 is a better point and shoot camera, for the superior auto mode does a good job of detecting white balance and kind of gives you the shot that you want without all the manual tweaking. Now as a daily driver, I'd probably pick the Z1 because of the Android ecosystem. I have the ability to customize, I have a better app selection, and I can do more with that camera with more apps. So I'd probably pick Android over Windows Phone, but that is just personal choice here. So no matter the preference of what ecosystem there is, I think that the Lumia 1020 has the better camera. Even though it was really close here on this camera, the Lumia 1020 I think had better low light performance, had a little bit more detail, and the level of manual controls is just unsurpassable by other manufacturers as of right now. So what do you guys think? Let me know what you think is the better camera down below, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.